Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebekah Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom.
In our top story, leaders of the fanatic Islamic Republic have approached negotiations with the United States in bad faith, while at the same time they have been fortifying Iran's nuclear sites against possible attack. Representatives for Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei have insisted on retaining the ability to enrich uranium to fuel Tehran's ominous nuclear weapons program. At home, the regime is working feverishly to protect its nuclear sites. Recent satellite imagery reveals that all entrances to the Isfahan nuclear facility have been buried underground. The Institute for Science and International Security said preparations like these were last observed in the days before Operation Midnight Hammer struck facilities at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. Following the first round of talks, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order calling for tariffs on any country working with the terrorist regime. He also announced new sanctions on shipping companies and vessels aimed at crippling Iran's illegal oil exports. President Trump hosted Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House last week to continue their close cooperation on a plan for Iran.
The Israeli Security Cabinet has approved a series of measures meant to strengthen, protect, and expand Jewish communities in the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria. Defense Minister Israel Katz and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich submitted the bill calling to lift confidentiality from land registry records and to cancel the racist Jordanian-era restrictions on land sales to non-Arabs. The legislation demands Israeli enforcement against illegal construction in areas controlled by the Palestinian Authority. It will also enable Israel to protect heritage and archaeological sites, and it transfers planning and construction powers for Hebron's Tomb of the Patriarchs from the PA-run Hebron municipality to Israel. Jerusalem continues to work to expand and protect Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. Unfortunately, this news was met with a backlash from Arab states and terror groups. Rebekah has more on that.
Yes, Yochanan, Muslim countries, the European Union, Canada, the UK, and radical Islamic terror groups are condemning Israel for the measures it is taking to secure Judea and Samaria. The EU released a statement criticizing the Israeli Security Cabinet's decision to expand Israeli control in what it calls the West Bank. It was joined by a chorus of criticism from Arab leaders. The Iranian-backed Hamas terror group urged Muslims to make a unified Arab and Islamic position against Israel. It called for Abraham Accords partners to cut off relations with the Zionist enemy and expel Israeli ambassadors from capitals that have established relationships with it. Hamas also urged Palestinians and their rebellious youth throughout Judea, Samaria, and Jerusalem to confront the Jews by all available means.
Top Hamas leader Khaled Mashal has rejected calls for the terror group to disarm and accept international rule over the Gaza Strip. Speaking from his terror base in Qatar, Mashal said disarming would criminalize the resistance. President Trump's peace plan for Gaza has entered the second phase. The teams of international emissaries are preparing to head to the war-shattered enclave. Nevertheless, Hamas refuses to demilitarize and surrender, evidence that the terror group remains committed to the destruction of the Jewish state. Israeli leaders and security officials have stated that they believe in order to move forward with Phase 2 of President Trump's plan, another IDF operation against Hamas in Gaza is necessary.
The Iranian regime planned the brutal crackdown on anti-government demonstrations months ago. Documents leaked by the Iranian opposition prove that Tehran planned and coordinated a strategy to suppress national protests in advance. The National Council of Resistance of Iran, or NCRI, released dozens of documents proving the regime's calculated plan for violent repression of protests. It published the Tehran Comprehensive Security Plan, signed by Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, granting security forces the authority to kill as many people as necessary in order to stay in power.
The Bank of Palestine has refused Israel's demand to shut down 3,400 accounts used to distribute payments to terrorists. The Palestinian Authority continues to incite bloodshed by paying murderers and their families. Despite claiming to have disbanded the pay-to-slay program, the PA is transferring blood money through accounts at the Bank of Palestine. Palestinian Media Watch reported that the PA paid 23,500 terrorists a total of $315 million last year. The number of recipients is set to increase to about 30,000 this year. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich has threatened to halt Israeli cooperation with the Arab Bank if it does not immediately comply with the account closures. This move could result in severe economic consequences for the Palestinian Authority.
UN Special Rapporteur to the Palestinians, Francesca Albanese, has called Israel the common enemy of humanity. During her address to the Al Jazeera Forum, Albanese falsely accused Israel of genocide in Gaza. Her speech was rife with anti-Semitic tropes and false accusations against the Jews and Israel. In July, the U.S. Treasury Department named Albanese as a specially designated national, forbidding all Americans and U.S. companies from conducting business with her. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced State Department sanctions against Albanese, saying the United States has repeatedly condemned and objected to the biased and malicious activities of Albanese that have long made her unfit for service as Special Rapporteur. He said Albanese has spewed unabashed anti-Semitism, expressed support for terrorism, and open contempt for the United States, Israel, and the West.
Families of the victims of the October 7th Hamas genocide in Israel are calling to stop the sale of land in Jerusalem to a Palestinian businessman due to his ties to Hamas. In a letter sent to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Jerusalem Mayor Moshe Leon, the family cited a lawsuit in a U.S. court against Bashar al-Masri for funding the Iranian-backed terror group. The letter said the Palestinian-American millionaire allegedly financed Hamas and enabled the Iranian-backed terror group to use facilities in Gaza that he owns. Al-Masri has been accused of knowingly working with Hamas and developing business properties in Gaza that provided electricity to the network of underground terror tunnels in the enclave. The group urged the Jerusalem municipality and the Knesset to block al-Masri's acquisition of land in the Israeli capital.
The city of Milan became a hotbed for anti-Israel sentiment last week as thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters took to the streets demanding that Israel be excluded from the Winter Olympics. The protests turned violent when participants threw smoke bombs and Molotov cocktails at the Italian police. The protesters also demanded the immediate release of a terror suspect. Mohammed Hanyoun, the president of the Palestinian Association in Italy, was arrested on suspicion of raising millions of euros for Hamas while claiming to fundraise for humanitarian causes in Gaza. Israel's Olympic team has faced discrimination at the Games and was loudly booed during the opening ceremonies.
The Oklahoma Senate has advanced legislation recognizing Judea and Samaria as part of the State of Israel. Republican Senator Judy Daniels introduced the Judea and Samaria bill, calling for the exclusive use of the historical and biblical term for the Jewish heartland. If the measure passes, Oklahoma will become only the second U.S. state to approve legislation recognizing Judea and Samaria. In April of 2025, Arkansas was the first state to require that all documents refer to the region as Judea and Samaria, effectively preventing state agencies from using the politically charged term West Bank.
The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange released its annual review of 2025, revealing that it reached record highs last year, despite wars with Iran and Hamas. The data reflects that since the initial plunge after the October 7th Hamas attacks on Israel and the ensuing wars on 7 fronts, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange has surged 98%, and the TA90 index jumped 94%. Foreign investors purchased 1.27 billion local shares in 2025. The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange also broke trading volume records, increasing by 57% last year.
Israel's National Transplant Center announced a record number of organ donations in the month of January. During this period, 11 families consented to organ donation, allowing 47 patients to receive 54 organs. These life-saving procedures included 7 heart transplants, 9 lung transplants, 9 liver transplants, and 21 kidney transplants. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. We're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Fleur Hassan-Nahoum. She's the Special Envoy for Innovation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Fleur, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh.
Tell our viewers a little about what is Special Envoy for Innovation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Well, it's actually a very exciting position because I'm kind of like a roving ambassador for Israel's best export, which is our creativity and our brain power. You know, as you know, Israel, since the beginning of our modern state in 1948, we didn't really have neighbors to trade with. So Israel developed an invisible export, which is technology. We are second only in GDP in terms of per capita startups to Silicon Valley, which is incredible. We are a country that has the largest part of our economy is technology. It's almost 20%, which is almost unheard of. And so there's a lot that this country is offering to solve the world's major challenges. And I'm the person who gets to go around the world talking about this and making sure that we have good, solid trade relations with all sorts of countries, some over the radar, some under the radar, and to really tell that story of Israel as a startup nation and Israel as one of the biggest exporters of the world's leading technologies.
You're doing a phenomenal job because our shekel hasn't been stronger in the last 5 years. Our stock market's the highest it's ever been. We're bringing in billions in investment, and all this at the tail end of a 2-year war. How do you explain it?
Well, it's not due to me, but thank you very much for the compliment. Well, basically, it's very interesting. Our stock market is up something like 30% during the war, and people are very confused as to why our economy is so robust. And the explanation is really that we are creating and inventing and solving problems in a way that nobody else is doing. Now, you could ask yourself, why? What is it about the Israeli psyche or the Israeli culture? So, I mean, you know this because you've got kids. Since kids are little, problem solving and resilience is really just part of the culture. You go to any university and every other student has some solution to some problem that they want to create. And that's why we have the largest per capita startups in the world. And so during a war, unfortunately, necessity is the mother of even more invention. Our defense technology had a real boost during the war because war is time where you get to test things and where you get to refine things and finesse things. And this is what happened during the war that we didn't want and we didn't start. So, for example, drone technology is something that we really sharpened during this war. And now we have some of the leading world's drone technology startups, and we are exporting that type of technology to countries. Now, what happens during the war is that a lot of the things that you develop during the war has something called dual use, which means civilian and military. And those are the things that we're exporting now for security and also for defense.
We see a lot of people talking about peace through strength. Yeah. Israel found out during the war that it's better to be feared than loved. There are leaders lining up to meet with our prime minister, come to Israel, get involved. What does this mean for the future of the Abraham Accords?
Well, I hope that it's an optimistic future for the Abraham Accords. I'm a little concerned now about what's going on with Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia and the UAE at the moment are in divergent paths in Sudan and Yemen. So we're not quite sure what's going to happen there. You know, it's not all about Israel. There's so many other things at play that Israel is kind of in the middle of. I'm hoping Indonesia could be a country that we see a future. They've certainly made overtures to Israel. And, you know, Azerbaijan signed up. And so there could be many surprising developments. I actually think Africa, and you've been very involved in Africa, is a really great continent for us to be pushing innovation.
President Trump has an administration that's unparalleled in how supportive they are of Israel. And that's helping a lot of different countries understand that Israel is a major force in the world because not just our technology and innovation, but our friendship with America. Do you think that will bring on increased investments from countries that we haven't seen in the past?
Ultimately, investments, nobody wants to do business with you for charity. And we don't need anybody's charity. We are a good place to invest in. We've seen many huge institutional investors bring their money to Israel. And now we know that NVIDIA is opening a huge data center development here with 15,000 jobs. Now, if the top AI chips company in the world has decided that its second biggest place that they're going to invest in is Israel, that should give you a good sign.
The Biden administration cut off our weapons during an existential war on 7 fronts, and now our prime minister is saying that we don't want the aid from America anymore. We want to develop our own industries. We're going to make our own weapons. How big a deal is that for our military industry?
Well, I'm not sure he said that we don't want aid, but what he's saying is that we can't be reliant on anybody, even though we have a very close friendship with America, and that the friendship from America should evolve. It shouldn't be something that Israel is dependent on. It should be something that we move forward together. And so Israel has to get more into the manufacturing of the things that we need for our own defense.
Fleur, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
So, first of all, I want to thank our allies for standing with Israel, for understanding that we're on the right side of history, that we're fighting the same battle against the evil forces of repression, suppression, and we are on the right side of history. We're standing for our Judeo-Christian values, but also to say that Israel is a country that celebrates life, that is productive, that is creative, and we're constantly looking to find the solutions for the world's biggest challenges, and that's why it's good to do business with Israel.
Thank you, Fleur, for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now the truth from Zion.
Iran has moved quickly to rebuild, rearm, and reposition its forces and its terrorist proxies following the 12-day war in June 2025. That battle may have ended, but Tehran's long war against Israel continues. In Lebanon, Hezbollah has resumed the shipment and stockpiling of advanced weaponry. The group's arsenal now includes precision-guided missiles, drones with upgraded targeting systems, and anti-aircraft weapons. Fighters have returned to frontline posts, new tunnels are being dug, and command centers have been reinforced. In Syria, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, has re-established logistic routes disrupted during the war. Weapons shipments from Tehran to Damascus have resumed, often disguised as civilian cargo. In Iraq, Iran-backed militias have increased recruitment and weapons transfers. These groups act as logistical hubs and forward operating arms of the IRGC. They provide Iran with plausible deniability while enabling it to move weapons, personnel, and cash across the region. In Yemen, the Houthis continue to test missile and drone attacks on Israeli targets and international shipping. Iran supplies the technology, the training, and the targets. After suffering significant damage in the 12-day war, the Houthis have adapted their tactics, using longer-range weapons, satellite navigation, and new maritime drones. Inside Gaza, Hamas and Islamic Jihad are also rebuilding. Iran is directly involved in the effort, sending money, operatives, and materials through covert routes. Explosives, rocket components, and encrypted communication systems are again moving into the war-ravaged Strip, even as Israeli forces continue clearing operations. In Judea and Samaria, Iran is working to expand its influence through the funding of terrorist cells, incitement campaigns, and social media networks that spread propaganda and recruit supporters. The goal is to trigger instability from within and stretch Israeli security forces even further. Globally, Iran has also increased its cyber activities. Israeli, American, and European agencies report rising numbers of intrusion attempts on military, energy, and transportation systems. Iran's military drills have escalated. Since July 2025, the IRGC has conducted multiple joint exercises with Russia and China. These drills include drone swarms, simulated sea blockades, and anti-satellite operations. Tehran is signaling that it can coordinate complex operations across multiple domains and theaters while continuing to share tactical lessons with its partners. At the same time, Iran's rogue nuclear program continues. International inspections remain limited. Enrichment levels are dangerously close to weapons-grade thresholds, and there are credible concerns that Iran is stockpiling enough material to build a nuclear device within a short period of time. Despite these provocations, Iran presents itself to the world as a victim and a seeker of peace. But in reality, Tehran is preparing for war. Every shipment, every drill, every propaganda campaign is part of a long-term strategy to isolate and overwhelm Israel and to test whether the free world will respond in time. But Israel is not sitting idly by. Its intelligence networks are tracking Iran's moves. Its defenses have been upgraded to better detect and intercept drone swarms, long-range missiles, and coordinated ground assaults. Israeli airstrikes in Syria have continued to disrupt weapons transfers, and targeted operations have prevented attacks before they begin. Washington has also remained engaged. Under President Donald Trump, the U.S. has supported Israel with weapons, intelligence, and diplomatic backing. In June 2025, a joint strike by American and Israeli forces targeted Iran's rogue nuclear infrastructure, delivering a clear message that red lines remain. But the threat has not passed. It is real. The fanatic Islamic Shiite regime in Tehran is adapting, learning, and preparing for the next war.
The 12-day war between Israel and Iran ended with a decisive victory for Israel. Israel must never again allow Iran to become that close to a nuclear breakout state.
Iran is not rebuilding for defense. It is preparing for its next opportunity to strike the Jewish state. Israel and the world cannot afford to be surprised again. From Jerusalem, this is the truth from Zion. Up next, shining light from Israel.
The Golan Heights stretches roughly about 700 square miles, but its topography changes greatly. In the north, you have Mount Hermon, which rises up about 10,000 feet above sea level. Right in the heart of the Golan Heights, in its capital, in the city of Katzrin, is one of 12 Talmudic villages that has been discovered here in this beautiful volcanic plateau. The Talmudic period in Judaism is defined as the period in which the oral tradition that was given to Moses on top of Mount Sinai, at the same time as the written Torah, was codified and written down on a piece of parchment. Here in the Talmudic village of Katzrin, unlike in a museum, one can actually touch the antiquity. Walk through the homes in which man lived over 1,500 years ago. Notice where the windows are placed and the entranceways to their homes, the ladder which led up to the bedroom. Even here in the dining room, where I'm sitting right now, the food was elevated above ground. Why? So all of these questions can be answered while you explore the ancient Talmudic village here in the city of Katzrin. Another great way to interact with the history here is to discover the tools that they use to build their homes, from the hammer and chisel to the pulley systems that they use to lift these heavy basalt stones. One of the predominant trees is the olive, and this is because the Golan Heights has the perfect climate for growing olives. And in ancient Golan, they produced a tremendous amount of olive oil. And there were several olive presses discovered here. This happens to be one of them. And how was the olive oil produced? Well, they would take their freshly picked olives, and then either somebody, like a human, or a beast of burden would push this around, crushing those olives, extracting the olive oil. Of course, this was the first press. The second press is they would fill up these baskets with the sludge, with the remnant of the first crushing, and they would stick it underneath the press over here. And then with a system of pulleys and weights, they would crush that and you'd have the second pressing. And then last but not least, in order to make sure that they get every bit of oil out of that olive, they would take the baskets and they would put it underneath this press, and again, really tightly, they would twist this all the way down, squeezing those olives to the maximum possible, extracting the last drop of olive oil. And the best part about this place is everything you see here is completely interactive. Let's go visit one of the modern olive producers here in the Golan Heights, Olea Essence. So we saw how they pressed olives in ancient times. Well, with modern Israeli innovation, we've been able to maximize what we're able to do with the olive, both in extracting its oil, but also using its refuse, which at one time was considered to be toxic. Here at Olea Essence, they've taken that toxic refuse and developed a line of cosmetic products that is world-renowned. And the best part about coming here is that you get to try the product and taste the olive oil. There are so many activities that tourists can do here in the Golan Heights besides visiting the ancient sites. Many families enjoy going on ATV tours, hiking through the most pristine valleys with gorgeous waterfalls and an abundant amount of wildlife.
I hope on your next travels through the Holy Land, you'll make a point to visit Katzrin.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebekah Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.